Our next storyteller is honestly probably the funniest storyteller I have ever heard. A couple years ago, he told a story about a shootout in Joplin, Missouri. I forget what story he told last month. But please put your hands together for Sami Ghani.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. So, when I was 10 years old, I fell in love with Istanbul, Turkey. It was just this city I read in an atlas back when I was in grade school, little Sammy Jr., getting really excited about this amazing city that I read about, and I just got obsessed. And it was my dream to go to Istanbul when I got older. You know, I would listen to the Might Be Giants song, Istanbul to Constantinople, on repeat over and over, which is like the great eternal joke. Every time I mention Istanbul, everyone's like, oh, did you mean Constantinople? It's original. I've never heard it before. You're so funny. But I fell in love with this city, and I was just so interested in this East meets West dichotomy, and I'm half Arabic, and I liked how it was interesting, almost like an Arab city, but also Mediterranean, so interesting. So I knew when I got to college and went to UW Madison, I had to go to Istanbul at some point. So I looked up the study abroad options, and I found there was a great option at Boğaziçi University, and I was like, oh, I have to go. So without a ton of planning, I decided to go to Turkey and live there for a whole year in Istanbul. And it's the best decision I've ever made. It's my favorite city in the world. But I went to Turkey in a situation where a lot of things could have gone wrong. You know, Turkey can be kind of volatile sometimes. They have a history with a terrorist group in their southern area. And I didn't speak Turkish at all. And, you know, erroneously, I thought, you know, I know some Arabic, and it's probably similar to Arabic. It's not at all. So before I went, I learned a couple words, like bread, ekmek. That's it. So I knew how to say ekmek, which is great. The biggest issue if you go to a country where you don't really know a lot of the language is if you look like a local, and I look hella Turkish. So, you know, I get on the bus, and I'd be riding the bus for my first little weeks there, and I'm just driving around, and people are like, oh, teşekkürler, hoş geldiniz, Türkçe biliyor musunuz? And I'm like, ekmek. Like, yeah, it's good. But eventually, you know, I lived there, and I met a bunch of amazing people, and I started to learn the language, and things were going really smoothly. And living there for the whole year was a fantastic decision. I had a lot of really great adventures while I was there that could have gone wrong, and were right on the cusp of going wrong, but didn't. You know, like I took a night bus by myself to Bulgaria and got detained at a border by guards with Uzis. I went to Serbia and partied with weird mafioso people in this area named Silicon Alley, where the most popular accessories were Kalashnikovs and PEC implants. It was very interesting. And I went to Jordan in Petra and got stuck in a flash flood in a chasm. But everything went well. Everything was actually fine with all those stories. Nothing went wrong. So it's my last 2 weeks in Turkey. And I'm really just winding it down. 3 of my really, really good friends, Lotus and Adrian Alex, who are all here tonight, came to visit me in Turkey. We had a great time. We ate a shit ton of baklava and drank way more tea and had a great time. And on their last day, I decided I want to take them to one of my favorite spots in the whole city. So anyone here been to Istanbul before at all? Okay, so one of my favorite parts of Istanbul is Taksim Square. So Taksim Square is kind of like the downtownish area of one of the 7 downtowns of Istanbul. It's a city of 16 million people. It's a lot of people. And I could get around better. I could say ekmek still, but I could say a lot of other words. So I could take them very easily to Taksim Square. And it's this beautiful, huge square. And there's this amazing park in Taksim Square called Gezi Park. And it's beautiful. It has these trees that were planted by the original founder of Turkey, Ataturk. It's one of the last remaining large green spaces in the entire city. And it's gorgeous. There's a huge fountain in the middle, all these benches to sit at. We sat there doing crossword puzzles in this crazy book Lotus brought. And it was a really perfect way to end this trip to Istanbul. So I have 2 weeks left. And, you know, I thought, what could go wrong for these last 2 weeks? Literally 2 days later, the park was on fire. And the reason the park was on fire, because the Prime Minister of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, decided he wanted to build a barracks on the park and tear down all the trees. There was these huge protests in the square. If anyone's familiar with these Gezi Park protests, they're all over the news. People camped down in the park, and the police snuck in and lit the tents on fire, and everyone was really stressed out. It wasn't great, you know, last 2 weeks in Turkey. So I wake up the day after the protests to like a conservative estimate of 6 emails and 5 Facebook messages from my mother saying, I swear to God, I know these protests are something you would get involved in. Since you've been gone, I've watched Midnight Express like 5 times. And if you end up in a Turkish prison before you leave, I will disown you. This is gonna be bad for you. So, I think about, I'm grabbing like a ton of baklava and tea with my friends who are also Erasmus students, exchange students in Turkey. We all decide, these protests really aren't for us. This is not like the thing. This is for the Turks who are living there. We want to be like protest tourists. And there's, and also my mother will disown me. So I decided not to go to the protests. And it was a good decision overall because the protests got pretty crazy. Like a kid died of being hit in the head with a tear gas canister. And the police had these huge vehicles called tomas. It's like, imagine a giant armored tank with a water gun. And the police were dumping pepper spray into the water tanks. So they'd shoot you in the face and you'd be knocked backwards and also blinded, because of pepper spray in the water. It was a not good situation at all. But I decided I love this city, I love this country, I want to help somehow, so I'm going to go when it's safe. And after a few days of protests, the people of Istanbul had kind of taken control of Gezi Park and the square at this point. So I decided to go with a few other students to go clean up, because the thing is, there were literally thousands of tear gas canisters just littering the ground in Taksim Square. And there were broken windows and broken ATMs, and it was just a mess. And living there for a year, I felt some ownership of the city, so I wanted to go try to help clean it up. So I go with some friends, and we're there, and it's a great atmosphere. Taksim Square, if you haven't been, is on kind of like a hill. And to get to the hill are these really steep roads, and people had built, seriously, Les Miserables-style barricades on all the roads going up. Literally, we're talking 7-foot-high chairs and doors and couches all stacked together to block these tomas from going up. So when you got to the square, it was like a party. It was great. There was all these people dancing and singing, and it was a really fun atmosphere. And everyone's cleaning up with these trash bags, cleaning up these canisters. And the atmosphere was awesome, and everything went well. Until all of a sudden, as we're picking up these tear gas canisters, we hear, and I've never heard this sound before, this loudly. And we hear, and then all of a sudden, kind of everyone looks up simultaneously. And there's 3 police helicopters in the air. And all of a sudden, these things start raining down from the police helicopters. And it's tons of tear gas canisters just littering the square. Anyone been tear gassed before? It's not super great. It's really bad. It's not good. So this tear gas immediately just fills the square and everything goes white and your eyes start swelling and crying. And the weirdest part about it is you get really spitty, just saliva starts pouring out of your mouth. So we are just so we all start sprinting down this hill about a mile down to this other neighborhood called Beşiktaş. And we're going in, and all these shop owners are come on. I'm screaming Ekmek, because I'm in panic mode. I'm reverting back to the old version of Turkish I didn't really know at the time, and it's filled with spit ekmek, so it's really hard to understand. But eventually we run into this shop, and the shop owner is there, and he has a plate of lemons, and it's just the 4 of us, and apparently lemons help neutralize the gas. I haven't had this scientifically confirmed, but we just poured lemon juice in our eyes, and it sort of helped, I guess. It wasn't worse, at a bare minimum. So when we get in this shop, the shop owner decides to just close the garage door. We're pouring lemon juice in our eyes on the ground, and they're talking to us really quickly in Turkish. And you ever learn another language and then get tear gas and pour lemon juice in your eyes? No one. Okay, it's really hard to understand the foreign language. So we're just kind of lying there for a few hours. And we ended up, after about 2 hours, we were able to see fully again and look out the windows. And we see this police running through the square, stopping people and arresting people. And we ended up staying there for about 4 hours. And once the tear gas got out of our eyes, then we waited for lemon juice to get out of our eyes. And once the lemon juice got out of our eyes, everything was fine. And we ended up leaving. We didn't go back to Taksim Square. I didn't get thrown into Turkish prison, Midnight Express style. And I came back here to tell the tale. Thank you very much.